Welcome to Super Talk Outdoors, where we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi. And I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful Super Talk Mississippi Radio Network or on Super Talk TV at C Spire TV. But as I say every week, some of you are watching on YouTube or Facebook or listening on your favorite podcast. It's March the 11th, 2024, and turkey season in Mississippi is right around the corner. Listen, we do celebrate the capital of the outdoors in Mississippi, and part of the issue with this show, or say the last 3 or 4 shows, has been about shining the light on the public process of outdoors and our wildlife heritage in this state. And I just I think it's important to realize that as a former newspaper publisher and a former digital media CEO, I learned well for a long career how important light is. I believe that sunlight can be a powerful lubricant to change. And it's important to keep the light on the public trust because we live in a democratic process. When you think about wildlife in Mississippi, it is a process where we should be involved. The democracy should prevail, because the work of something like the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks is doing the people's work, not special interest work. So we're going to continue to kind of keep that focus on. And listen, I am delighted in retirement to be in a position where my years of experience as a publisher intersects with my love of the outdoors. It's a terrific opportunity for me, and I'm honored and I'm privileged to be here. And I'm really, really happy that I have an independent voice. I can say what others may not say, or maybe for lots of political reasons or otherwise, they're not willing to say what really needs to be said. I want you to know that the show I had last week, well, went into great detail about the last couple of years on the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Commission, some disruptive moments that Leonard Bentz, a commissioner that was appointed a couple of years ago, brought. I did a pretty detailed assessment of that. And if you missed it, I would really encourage you to go look at it. You can go to your favorite podcast platform and just look for Super Talk Outdoors, March the 4th. Take a listen. You can go to YouTube, the Super Talk Mississippi YouTube page. You can go to the Super Talk Outdoors Facebook page. You can find this show however you want to find it, but it's there. I really encourage you to take a look at that. So now I want to move over to my friend and a very special guest, Will Primos. I don't know anyone who cares more about Mississippi's outdoors heritage than Will Primos. How you doing, my friend?
Hey, Ricky. How's my friend doing?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I'm doing great because we got a mission, man. We got a mission. And we're going to stay focused on that.
I'm going to cut you off real quick, and I'm going to thank you for being the voice of the Mississippi outdoorsman. First off, I think people ought to know that you don't have to do this. You've had a career. You're basically retired. You're doing this because you have a passion for Mississippi's outdoors, and you want to add some transparency to what we have governing everything that happens to all of us in rules and regulations and laws, and the science or lack of science that is applied to the decisions that are made by those in charge. So, when I see somebody like you who's really giving back, I don't know if you are even paid anything for this, but if you are, it ain't enough to make you want to come back and do it tomorrow unless you had the passion that you do. So thank you, Ricky. Thank you.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Will, I ran across this quote from Theodore Roosevelt. Well, there's so many that we could look at. But this one, I think, speaks extraordinarily well to the point that you just made about a role that we all need to play. I mean, more Mississippians need to be involved in the process. But Theodore Roosevelt once said this: "The greatest good for the greatest number applies to the number within the womb of time, compared to which those now alive form but an insignificant fraction." In other words, what he's saying is we're just in a small part of our time right now, and the decisions that we're making for the greater good will impact generations to come, is what he's saying. Our duty to the whole, including the unborn generations, bids us restrain an unprincipled present-day minority from wasting the heritage of these unborn generations. the movement for the conservation of wildlife and the larger movement for the conservation of our natural resources are essentially democratic in spirit, purpose, and method. And it's a real, you got to kind of understand what it's saying, but essentially what it's saying is that we're doing generational work, man. And we cannot let special interest or our lack of qualifications or our lack of doing our homework or whatever it might be keep us from making the kind of decisions that's going to preserve natural resources and wildlife the way we know it today for our kids and our kids' kids. That's what he's saying.
Well, thank heavens we had visionaries and leaders like Roosevelt in our past. We are here on Earth for a very short time. I mean, I'm 72 years old, and I've lived in the Mississippi woods from the time that I can remember being 5 years old. And I know what that means to me. And when people are making decisions for the next generation that gets to live a life, their lifetime, which is also a very short time, we can make a huge difference in their opportunities to enjoy the outdoors. So, you know, when I've been listening to your shows, I'm paying attention. Golly, you know, I go back to Billy Joe Cross when I was a kid, a younger teenager in my 20s, and leading the commission and leading the game and fish department. And then it became Mississippi Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, all grouped together. I was a part of that think tank that helped guide that process. So I've watched the commissioners, and when you have commissioners who are smart, informed, who pay attention, and who listen, that don't make decisions based on emotion, but based on what's best for the future, things can rock on. But lately, you've made it so apparent to me that nobody on the commission has a scientific wildlife forestry background. And when they're making these decisions for politics because they're aligned with some group and they don't want to make them mad or whatever, and not listening to science, we get in a lot of danger. Now, I know Billy Munger personally. I consider Billy a friend. But I've watched Billy weigh decisions out, listen, and defer. I don't know enough about that. He doesn't just vote because he thinks it's going to get him somewhere politically, or Billy don't need nobody. He's his own man. And when that discussion came up about duck stamp money and not sending it to the Prairie Pothole region and sending it to some place in Tennessee to raise ducks. I mean, I'm not a scientist. I have a minor in biology. I was interested in that world. I chose that as my minor in college. But that is just so crazy. It's so foreign from my ability to think. So I give money to those that are working on those programs in the Prairie Pothole region, so farmers will leave a buffer to give the ducks a place to nest and to be able to allow the upland birds or whatever to, utilize the habitat. But when you start talking about domestic ducks and thinking they're going to fly to Mississippi, that's crazy. It has no basis on fact or science. Little things like that have disturbed me.
Well,
Will, it would come up by the commission disturbs me.
Well, Will, what's troubling about it is all you need is 3 votes. 3 votes can change the course of history. In that particular case, only 2 voted against spending the duck stamp money in the Prairie Pothole region. 3 saw the light. But if one more person would have switched their vote, we wouldn't have made this investment. And as you know, in the Prairie Pothole region of Canada and northern U.S., if we don't pool our money with Ducks Unlimited and Delta Wildlife and all these other organizations and the federal government, so we can make substantial investments in those areas, we don't make a dent in the kind of effort that needs to be put in order to create
Quail
more
Forever and
ducks.
Feathers Forever are also very involved, and they understand that. They understand how we produce more of those particular birds.
Yes. I got after that, I got notes from so many people. I got a note from a young man. I tell you what we'll do. We'll pick that up on the other side when we continue this conversation with my friend Will Primos. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have my friend Will Primos. He's literally a living legend, a really good friend. I got to know.
Maybe in your mind.
Well, look, I got to know Will really well when we worked together over about a 2-year period to get the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund that is now in action now and making amazing investments all across Mississippi. And Will, that was fun. That was fun to work together on that project, wasn't it?
Yes, sir.
So, look, when we went to break, though, I was mentioning on this note of how you could possibly not have a 5-0 vote on spending Mississippi duck stamp money in the prairie pothole region of North America. A lot comes to mind when you get two that vote against that. But one of the most interesting notes I got was from a young man at Mississippi State who was listening to the show. And he was going through, I think he was either a second year or junior. And he said, we learned the basic biology of duck migration, like early in our tenure in learning about how to do conservation, how to do biology and all that. How can we possibly have anyone on our commission that are making decisions for the rest of us who would not know that just going into the conversation? That's what was troubling about it.
Well, that young man, I mean, he's right. How could you? How could you? You protect what you love. You have children, and you'll die for them. You'll do whatever it takes to keep them from going out in the road when they shouldn't. To teach them if they touch that, they're gonna burn their hand. You love them, you protect them. Growing up in Mississippi's outdoors, starting my first time when the light bulb just went crazy, I was 11 years old at Fighting Bayou near Greenwood, Mississippi, with my uncle Gus. And I saw what I thought was all the ducks in the United States lighting all around me. And I was infatuated. And that started my journey and began to understand what habitat. Why did these ducks like this place? Why was my uncle a founding member of this place? Why was the water only 12 inches deep around these big monster oak trees? And found out what a nuttall oak tree was, and just began to understand the habitat. And you can manipulate that and change it. Well, I began to love and understand that all these critters that I love to see and to watch and to hunt, the habitat was pretty good. And I learned to love that. So my interest went to the habitat. So you protect what you love. And that's where my heart and passion goes when I start talking about conservation. Conservation, not only in Mississippi, but the United States. So recently I've become involved and helped start a company. Nick Thomas was the founder of Steward Link, where we represent the farmer, the steward of the land. If you own the land and farm it, you're the steward. If you lease the land from an owner, you're the steward. So Steward Link helps these conservation programs and put them in place to possibly stop erosion, for variable pest control for insects, where you don't have to spray all 1,000 acres if you don't have the problem on all 1,000 acres. Variable fertilizer application, because for years, I farmed for a while. I had a place that I tried to farm, and they told me I needed to put nitrogen on the land, so I put it on all 2,000 acres. Little did I know, I could have taken soil samples and found out that I didn't need nitrogen but on 200 acres. So that's less nitrogen in the soil, going down into the streams, going downstream. Everything goes downstream. Ducks Unlimited is so important to me because they're all about wetlands. good water is basic to our survival and our health. So you protect what you love. And to see things kind of going the way they are, and the fact that we don't have anybody on the commission with a biological background, the fact that that's not even required is become very apparent to me. It's been that way all my life, but we never had people making horrible decisions.
Well, see, one of the there was a bill that popped up. There may be still some conversations about this to move the commission from 5 to 7 or 9. But the point was it would try to bring in, I think it was 9 actually, four additional people, and have at least 4 of the commission members have to have some requirement. So you have some political appointees and some requirement. The governor pushed back on that because he didn't want to increase government. So, okay, I get that. So then just slap some requirements on the current 5. Let's get this done. Where it's agonizing, Will, is in their management of CWD. And in their management of CWD, chronic wasting disease, you get to see very clearly sort of how they think. During a really famous meeting where they asked you, they made the decision to ask the Attorney General to be able to render a decision. Can the commission make a decision about the sale and transfer of white-tailed deer? And in that meeting, there was one point where they were trying to read something and trying to decide, is this something? Is this, they just had it put in front of them. They're trying to read it. It's, what the request of the Attorney General is going to be. And Leonard Bentz, it was one point in the meeting where I think maybe one of the lawyers said, well, I haven't even had a chance to read this yet. And Leonard Dillon immediately says, it don't matter. This is the commission. We can make decisions based on the commission. I think y'all ought to get behind us on it. But we're making a decision with a motion and a second. And again, no public comment. They're just a ramrodding attitude about things. I mean,
I'd cut Mr. Bentz off and I would say it does matter. It matters that you read the bill before you pass it if you're in Congress. It matters that you know what you're talking about because it affects the Mississippians, the people who love outdoor world. And CWD is a big deal.
Yes.
It can destroy us. I got a friend in Montana. It wiped his whole herd out. It wiped the whole herd out on 10,000 acres. Beautiful drainage country in Montana, full of whitetails. I don't think there 5 were left. I don't know how many it was, but it wasn't but a handful.
Yeah.
And it was all due to CWD.
Well, we found CWD in Mississippi in 2018, and here it is 2024, and we're still moving some counties into CWD and some out of CWD. But what's interesting about this is when the commission does this on a whim, they're not getting public input about it, and they're not asking their department biologists what they think. They're just doing it because they can do it. Let me give you another quick example. And I mean, these things, I was a publisher. I was raised in an environment where everything is negotiable except your integrity. Okay, so ethics is really important. I believe that the commission's going to represent special interests from time to time. I'm not naive to that. But the fact is, they should try to act beyond reproach. That's my point of view. That they should, and by doing that, they keep our kids and our heritage at bay. And they are always having that front and center in everything that they're doing their homework, thinking about stuff, getting the public involved, getting the biologists involved. One of my farms that I lease is in Tallahatchie County. I mentioned this last week. And the current chairman, Bill Kosser, he also hunts there. I guess he lives there, but I know he hunts there. But he didn't disclose during this discussion when he himself introduced a motion to take Tallahatchie out of a CWD zone. The positive doe that was found there was found in the adjoining farm to the farm that I lease. So they take it out. They take it out on his motion. And they vote to take it out, and then, but he never discloses that he, that's where he hunts because he wanted to be able to supplementally feed, without any public comment, without listening to the biologists. We can't run Mississippi's wildlife efforts this way, Will. We just can't.
Ricky, what you're speaking to is transparency. And if people are not willing to be transparent, you know, my business partners, we're transparent. We don't hide anything from each other. We go out of our way to make sure somebody knows that there's something that might have an effect on a decision on our future. We want to be transparent. So you spoke to it about character a minute ago, your integrity. I wish you'd talk to some of the mainstream media folks and see if they couldn't get some integrity back in their world. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I agree with that.
It's crazy. And speaking about Tate Reeves, I want to challenge Tate Reeves. I want Tate Reeves to call me. I want him to pick up the phone.
Let's do this.
Yeah.
You can. I want you to make that challenge on the other side. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Will Primos. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. Anytime I have an opportunity to visit with my friend Will Primos, who's one of the most passionate outdoorsmen I have ever met in my life, and it's just an honor to have the opportunity to call him a friend. That's for sure. But Will, when we went to break, you were talking about you have a challenge. So why don't you pick it up from there?
I challenged Tate Reeves. You made the statement that he squashed having more commissioners and with a biological background or scientific background because he didn't want to increase government. Is the commission not a volunteer situation?
I think they're paid something, but not much. I don't think it's that big a deal. Yeah.
It's not without some time and some effort on those people to be a part of it. I don't think that increases government at all. I'm sure that if Tate Reeves doesn't think he can find the money, that we can find enough interested people to pay for whatever those four commissioners cost. But I challenge him to call me because I want him to understand what it is to be a Mississippi outdoorsman, to live and breathe and wake up every day wanting to be there, to watching the sunrises, watching the sunsets, listening to a turkey, listening to the wings of those ducks before you even know they're on top of you, listening to a buck going through his natural rutting process and does bleeding back in the woods, all the things that go, a fish jumping out of the water and splashing, all the things, those things that just stimulate us. Tate Reeves called me. This is too deadgum important to not understand what we're dealing with. We need qualified, good people on that commission to make good decisions. And what sounds the alarm for me is the fact that anybody could vote for sending money to Tennessee to raise domestic ducks thinking they're going to fly to Mississippi. It's absolutely insane. And so the passion for me gets swollen, gets good, because all of a sudden you're messing with what I love. Remember what I said? You'll protect what you love, Ricky Matthews.
Yes, sir.
Protect it. And I want to protect it. Why was I so adamant about the trust fund, about getting that money for the state when Delbert Hoseman and others were against us? Come on, people. The government will double and triple the amount of money. If we put in 15, they'll put in 45. And we've got money to do things by each county can apply for these opportunities to put conservation on the ground, to build shooting facilities, to build bird watching places, bicycle trails, whatever it might be that the people that have been put on that committee make the decision that that's the most beneficial for the state. Why do we have to play politics with this stuff? This is the livelihood. This is basically still a rural state. People live in small towns. They hunt and fish. That's their life. That's what they do. And we need to make it better. We don't need to. I mean, when you're talking about CWD, Ricky, what's the term that kept being used in COVID over there in China? They were trying to go for gain of function. Come on, gain of function? Are you kidding me? That's what you're doing with CWD. Let's go transfer all these deer, these pins. Let's get a gain of function going, so we can make CWD stronger and affect more of our whitetail in Mississippi. That's what the problem is. That's why we're against it. I'm not against some guy wanting to grow a big buck, but I'm against what is evidently leading to more CWD is transferring, selling deer pen to pen. The deer belong to the people of Mississippi. They don't belong to any one individual.
And we don't want to do that in Mississippi. And there's a bill now that Chairman Kincaid in the House had presented and has passed the House 117 to nothing. That will really, I don't know, galvanize the North American wildlife model that the wildlife belongs to the people and you can't sell deer. So far, we've been successful in stopping that in Mississippi. But you look at what's happened in Texas, it's a disaster.
Yeah.
You look at the contrast between Wisconsin and Illinois. Illinois has been pushing hard to control it. You can only contain it. There's no cure. And it is once someone said on my show, Will, that CWD may be the anchor that sinks hunting in America if we don't start taking it more seriously. And listen, buddy, listen to me on this one. God forbid it ever transfers to a human being. We big time going to have a problem then. So there needs to be research and studies and support and education.
I don't know. People don't know that it can't be transferred to human beings.
They don't know
what stage the disease has to be eating it or touching it or whatever. But I remember when CWD, it was called something else, but it was a special produced by British Public Radio. I forget what the name of that is, but they were talking about the cows, mad cow disease.
Yes.
Right? And
yes.
You can look that special up, and there are people who got it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's that's why the experts say they can't tell you definitively. So that's why they tell you don't eat a deer that was CWD positive. And that's why the state's been really working hard to put all these testing sites in place and whatever. But when you have a commission that's vacillating on this, that they're still, the main thing when a deer is found positive, the main thing that happens in that county is they stop supplemental feeding, whatever. They just need to stop supplemental feeding across the state. I mean, we got to quit toying with this, Will. Ultimately, we got to start taking it more seriously.
You're speaking to the deadgum choir. We need to quit toying with it. I mean, it might be some hard decisions for a while. There may be some things that we as sportsmen don't really want to see have to happen, but the alternative might be a whole lot worse.
Well, I would say what they have, William McKinley is the head of the deer program, and he's been on the show so many times. He did a public meeting in Harrison County. They found a CWD positive in Harrison County, all the way down here. And so they had a public meeting. And by the way, some of the hunters that went there, I heard from many of them, they went to this meeting loaded to bear. They were going to fight the department and they were going to give William McKinley a hard time, et cetera. William's presentation at that public meeting was on a scale of 1 to 10, a 12. Because he had the opportunity, he had just returned from a major national CWD conference where all the states are beginning to share data. The data doesn't lie. The data is the data. It doesn't lie. They're sharing information. You're be able to see the best practices emerging in the U.S. And he shared all of that. And hunters that went there ready to pounce, they started asking some really good questions. And you could tell they were concerned. It was one of the best public meetings I've ever seen. I've been, as a former publisher, I've been to a bunch of public meetings in my career. But it was really good. People can actually see it and go to Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks website and look for the Harrison County public meeting. But again, the body of knowledge is tremendous. And listen, I've had specific conversations with commissioners to say, well, when you sat down with William McKinley, he didn't compel you to think about this in a different way. And you know what the answer was, unfortunately, was, well, I've never sat down with William McKinley before. What? So, you got to do your homework.
William McKinley has nothing but the best interest of the sportsman in Mississippi at heart. He doesn't want to see a deadgum nuclear bomb. He wants to try to use the science and do what we can to figure this out and what the best decisions for all the sportsmen are. He has nothing but the best interest in mind. So you can be selfish about it or you can not. And you can listen to the science and make good decisions. That's what we've got to do.
Well, there's a theory that deer breeders in Mississippi want to minimize CWD. because they know that's kind of standing in the way of them being able to sell and transfer a deer. So they're working to minimize it. So you have a force on the commission that's working to minimize it. And so we're having this tug of war. And in the meantime, the mixed message of that tug of war is being sent to every hunter in Mississippi. They don't know whether to take it serious or not. So,
Ricky, you know what a lobbyist is, don't you?
Oh, yes.
Well, the deer breeders in Mississippi have lobbyists. I understand.
They do.
They are working to spin the story to get
Yes.
their way.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's the best thing for the sportsman in Mississippi.
Yeah. Well, look, here's the thing. This is why I think this show and the conversations we're having on this show are so critical. And that is to bring light to the public process that is the commission, the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks Commission. There is a public trust that they protect. Democracy is about people being involved in the process. Too much of their work for too long has been out of sight, out of mind. And what I'm trying to do is bring light to it so that the average person can say, you know what, I better start paying closer attention. Maybe when a meeting is going to be near me, maybe I should go to the meeting and express my concerns. Or maybe I should start watching those meetings as they are live streamed so everyone can see them. But we've got to start paying closer attention. You know, the thought that for example, Leonard Bentz could come up for confirmation has not been confirmed yet. And that the chairman of the Wildlife Senate Committee would be telling people before the confirmation process even starts that he's going to be confirmed. You know, if I'm a member of that committee and I hear my chairman saying that, I would not appreciate that. I would say we need to have a serious inquiry, especially given the buzz that's around that guy. And it's not just him. Anybody who comes up for confirmation. We ought to school. You know, if there's not going to be qualifications placed on these guys, the Senate Wildlife Committee has a responsibility to say, well, let's find out what they know about this. Let's find out, what do you know about CWD? What do you know about other diseases? What do you know about duck migration? What do you know? What's your point of view about these things? That's the kind of stuff we got to start doing. When we come back on the other side, we'll continue our conversation with Will Primos. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have my dear friend Will Primos with us, and we've had a passionate conversation about the public trust as it relates to conservation and wildlife management efforts in our state. And the point that you ought to hear from us is that we better pay closer attention. We got to quit letting it be out of sight, out of mind, because they're making decisions that are generational, that are literally three of the 5 votes can change the course of history for our kids and our kids' kids. And we can no longer let them continue to make those decisions in a vacuum without input, public input of biologists, and so on. And we're going to keep talking about it until we get this thing sort of, the ship righted. Phil, Will, any last thoughts before we shift gears?
Well, I just really would like for people to pay attention. And I know everybody's busy. You got kids, you got every sports to play in the world. But people who are passionate about the outdoors, people who raise their family as a hunting family, you've got to know more about what's going on and influence the right people who make decisions so that we can get the right people making those decisions for our future. That being said, turkey season is fixing to start.
Hey, Will, look, one of the funnest parts of our conversation when I first started the show, you joined me for an hour and we told your whole story, which is fascinating. But I've quoted you many times about this. You talked about it. These are my words, not yours, but this is the concept that you described. As you're sitting there and you hear the turkey gobbling, you think to yourself to thank the Lord that you're in this moment, but then you realize you don't necessarily have to do that because you're literally in a prayer in that moment. I just love the way you said that.
Well, it's true. You know, pray without ceasing. I love the Lord. Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, and I try every day to live up to his standards. It's impossible, but I try. And I see so much of God when I'm in nature, closer to God when I'm in nature. And just being in the spring woods, everything's coming alive. I call them little greens. The little different bushes and trees bud out at different times. And you watch them. The pecans and the persimmons are usually the later ones to leaf out. But just to be there and watch all that. And, you know, to spend time in the turkey woods, getting to talk to a turkey, to listen to them. It's re-energizing. You've been through a winter. You've been through. It's basically the beginning of the year for me. That's where my year starts, is spring turkey hunting. So I'm looking forward to being there and sitting next to a few friends, Brad Ferris, Thad Miller, Lake Pickle, Jordan Blissett, to sit there next to them and talk about, whisper to each other about what we think that's going on as we're trying to get that turkey to come to us. And sharing that time with friends is nothing better. And a few years ago, I had the only perfect turkey hunt I ever had. I asked my wife, I said, Mary, you want to go turkey hunting with me anymore? She said, yeah. I said, you going to shoot? She goes, no, I'm going to let you shoot. She's a good turkey shooter. She likes to hunt turkeys. And so we went, turkey gobbled. Right when I eased the door shut, turkey gobbled. And I looked at her. She said, you know where he is? I said, I think I know where he is. I know which ridge he's on, I think. Let's go. So we went there. We got to where he gobbled a few more times going to him, but we got there and we're standing there. I'm waiting for him to gobble. And he gobbles. And he is off the side of the ridge, maybe 75 yards from us. I pointed to a tree. She knew what to do. She sits down. I sit down. That turkey flew down, gobbled one time, and walked straight up there to us. I never even had to move my gun. It was on my knee. All I did was pull the trigger. That's the only perfect turkey hunt I've ever been on. I'm looking forward to one more.
I love that. Hey, listen, incidentally, Lake and Jordan join me from time to time on this show. Lake was on recently, and he, first of all, he's super educated. His travels across the United States have provided for him such a perspective, and he's passionate about the same subjects that you and I are passionate about, and he doesn't mind saying how he feels. And it's important because here's this early 30-something guy that he can speak to people his age and say, these are the reasons why we need to pay attention to this. I'm super proud of Lake and Jordan for that matter, but they're doing great, aren't they?
I'm super proud of them.
So listen, we only have like a minute or so left, but you got a book about to come out. We'll have you back and we'll talk more about that, but tell me about that real quick.
Well, Anthony Matarese is a world champion sporting clay shooter, and he wrote an incredible book, a big, huge coffee table book on the sport. And he's the most decorated person in the United States for sporting clays. And so I asked him to sign my book. He was here in our area for a shoot. He won the shoot. And then I went to him and said, would you sign my book? Sure, Will. I'll be glad to sign your book. He went, how does he know my name? Turns out his favorite duck call is a winch. He emailed me a couple of days later when he got back home. He emailed me, and I didn't even know how he found my email. He said, Will, call me. So I called him and he said, let's write a book together. And so we're writing a book on how to shoot in the field based on what you learn from sporting clays.
Wow, that is so cool. I can't wait to talk more about that. But Will, listen, I know you're a busy guy, but I can't tell you how much I appreciate you, man. Your passion is very contagious.
Thank you. We need to pay attention.
I know we do. Hey, God bless everyone. Hey, as I always say every week, stay safe when you're in the outdoors, especially get into turkey season. Just be safe. Put safety first. God bless you, and we'll see you next Monday.
Thank you, Ricky.